Beloved friends, the desire for respect is noble, for it aligns with a heart that seeks to glorify God through character and conduct. Yet respect is not something to be demanded. It is a fruit cultivated by consistent integrity, humility, and wisdom. Today I address 6 habits that, if not uprooted, will render even the most well-intentioned soul unworthy of the respect they desire. Let us examine them with care and seek the grace of God to overcome. The power of the spoken word cannot be underestimated. It has the potential to build bridges or to destroy them, to soothe a heart or wound it irreparably. Speaking without thinking is like releasing arrows from a bow without aiming, hitting unintended targets and causing damage that cannot always be undone. Those who indulge in this habit find themselves at odds with others, often bewildered by the consequences of their unchecked tongues. They fail to realize that every word carries weight, and the wise steward their speech as they would their most precious possessions. When words are spoken in haste, they often lack the tempering of wisdom and love. A sharp retort, an unkind comment, or a thoughtless jest can linger in the heart of the listener long after it is spoken. The one who speaks rashly may forget the incident, but the one who hears it may carry the pain for a lifetime. The damage done by reckless words can sever relationships, disrupt communities, and even turn the hearts of friends into those of adversaries. Thus, the failure to think before speaking is not merely a personal flaw, but a threat to the harmony of those around us. Moreover, speaking without thought reveals a lack of self-control, a fruit of the Spirit that is indispensable for a life of dignity and respect. Self-control in speech is not only about avoiding harm, it is about choosing words that edify and inspire. The unguarded tongue, however, runs wild, speaking whatever comes to mind without regard for its impact. Such speech is often driven by pride or impatience, with the speaker more concerned about being heard than about speaking rightly. Those who speak without thinking often misunderstand the power of silence. There is a profound wisdom in holding one's peace, in waiting until the right moment to speak with the right words. Silence allows the heart to discern, the mind to deliberate, and the spirit to align with truth. To speak in haste is to forgo these gifts, trading the opportunity for meaningful dialogue for the fleeting satisfaction of a careless remark. The wise understand that sometimes the most impactful words are those that are never spoken. This habit also undermines trust. When someone is known for speaking rashly, others begin to doubt the sincerity and reliability of their words. Trust is built on consistency, on the assurance that a person's words align with their heart and actions. The one who speaks without thinking betrays this alignment, causing others to question their motives and integrity. It is a grave thing to lose the trust of others, for respect cannot flourish where trust is absent. Furthermore, speaking without thinking often leads to regret. How many times has a thoughtless word caused the speaker to wish they could take it back? But words, once spoken, cannot be recalled. They linger in the minds of those who hear them, sometimes taking root and growing into bitterness or misunderstanding. The remorse that follows such speech is a heavy burden, yet it is entirely avoidable. A moment's reflection before speaking can prevent hours, even years, of sorrow. The Scriptures warn us repeatedly about the dangers of the tongue. It is described as a fire, a restless evil full of deadly poison. Yet it is also said that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. The contrast is striking. The same tongue that can destroy can also build, depending on how it is used. To speak thoughtfully is to harness this power for good, to use words as instruments of grace and truth rather than harm. A habit of speaking without thinking also reflects a deeper spiritual issue of failure to value the image of God in others. To speak carelessly is to disregard the dignity and worth of the one being spoken to. It is an act of selfishness, prioritizing one's own need to express over the needs of others, to be treated with respect and kindness. The heart that truly loves will guard its words, knowing that they have the power to bless or to wound. Overcoming this habit requires intentionality and prayer. It requires a heart willing to be disciplined and a mind committed to wisdom. One must develop the habit of pausing before speaking, of asking whether the words they are about to utter are true, necessary, and kind. This pause is not a sign of weakness but of strength, a demonstration of mastery over one's impulses and a commitment to living in harmony with others. In cultivating thoughtful speech, one must also seek humility. Much of the harm caused by speaking without thinking stems from a prideful assumption that one's words are always worth hearing. Humility reminds us that silence can be more powerful than speech, that listening can be more valuable than talking. It teaches us to consider the needs of others above our own desire to express ourselves. Ultimately, the goal is not merely to avoid harm, but to use speech as a means of glorifying God and edifying others. The tongue, when guided by wisdom and love, becomes a vessel for truth, encouragement, and healing. By overcoming the habit of speaking without thinking, one not only avoids the pitfalls of careless words, but also steps into the higher calling of using speech to bring light and life to those around them. Refusing to listen is a deeply rooted issue of the heart that reflects pride, self-centeredness, and a lack of empathy. When a person closes their ears to the voices of others, they signal that their thoughts, opinions, and perspectives are more valuable than those of their fellow beings. This refusal is not just a minor fault, but a grave hindrance to meaningful relationships, personal growth, and spiritual maturity. Listening is the gateway to understanding, and to shut that gate is to live in a prison of one's own making, isolated from the wisdom, correction, and love that others might offer. A person who refuses to listen often finds themselves isolated, not because others withdraw, but because they erect barriers that prevent meaningful interaction. To refuse to listen is to declare independence from community, to sever the ties that bind individuals together in mutual respect and care. It is a lonely road, one where the refusal to hear others eventually leads to others ceasing to speak. In their silence, relationships erode, and the one who would not listen is left alone with their thoughts, bereft of the richness that comes from shared understanding. The refusal to listen also reveals a spirit resistant to correction. None among us is perfect. We all require guidance, advice, and sometimes even rebuke to stay on the path of righteousness and wisdom. Yet the one who shuts their ears to others forfeits this precious resource, choosing instead to stumble forward in ignorance. Such a person may pride themselves on their independence, but in truth they are enslaved to their own limitations. Refusing to listen ensures that they remain blind to their faults and deaf to the counsel that could lead them to greater heights. In the context of spiritual growth, refusing to listen is particularly perilous. God often speaks through others through their words, actions, and even their silence. To refuse to listen is, in many ways, to refuse to hear God. It is a dangerous posture, one that shuts out the still, small voice of the Spirit and the guidance of those He places in our lives. The person who refuses to listen not only alienates themselves from others, but also distances themselves from the blessings and direction that God intends to provide. Furthermore, the refusal to listen breeds misunderstanding and conflict. Much of the strife in relationships arises not from malice, but from a failure to truly hear one another. When a person is unwilling to listen, they fail to grasp the heart of the other's message, leading to assumptions, misinterpretations, and unnecessary disputes. This creates a cycle of frustration and hurt, where the refusal to listen causes division, and the resulting division reinforces the refusal to listen. Breaking this cycle requires humility and a genuine desire to understand rather than to dominate the conversation. The habit of refusing to listen also stifles personal growth. Listening is how we learn, whether it be from the wisdom of elders, the experiences of peers, or the questions of the young. When a person refuses to listen, they cut themselves off from this wealth of knowledge, choosing instead to rely solely on their own understanding. This not only limits their growth, but also fosters an attitude of arrogance, as they begin to see themselves as the sole source of truth. True wisdom, however, comes from recognizing that every person has something valuable to teach. Refusing to listen also diminishes our ability to show love and compassion. Listening is one of the simplest yet most profound ways to demonstrate care. It tells the other person that they are seen, heard, and valued. When someone refuses to listen, they communicate the opposite, that the other person's thoughts, feelings, and experiences are unworthy of attention. This can cause deep wounds, especially in close relationships, where the refusal to listen can feel like a rejection of the person themselves. In a broader sense, refusing to listen contributes to a divided and fragmented society. Communities thrive on dialogue, on the exchange of ideas, and the willingness to understand differing perspectives. When individuals refuse to listen, they create barriers that prevent this exchange, fostering an environment of division and hostility. Listening, on the other hand, is a bridge that connects people, even when they do not agree. It is a foundation for unity, built on mutual respect and the acknowledgement of each person's inherent worth. Seeking self-glory is a subtle yet pervasive danger that ensnares the heart and corrupts the soul. It begins innocently, often masked as a desire for excellence or recognition, but quickly grows into an obsession with personal praise. The heart that craves glory for itself loses sight of higher purposes and becomes consumed with the need to exalt its own name. Such a pursuit is not only vain but destructive, leading to spiritual emptiness and fractured relationships. For when self-glory reigns, it leaves no room for humility, gratitude, or the glorification of God, to whom all true honor belongs. A life focused on self-glory is marked by a restless striving for approval. The person seeking their own exaltation lives in constant anxiety, for their worth becomes tied to the opinions of others. They labor not out of love or service, but out of a need to prove their greatness. Yet the applause of others is fleeting, and no amount of external validation can fill the void that self-glory creates. This relentless pursuit leaves them weary, disillusioned, and perpetually unsatisfied, for the approval of man is a shallow substitute for the peace that comes from God's acceptance. Self-glory also blinds a person to the contributions and value of others. It breeds pride, which insists that one's own efforts, achievements, or talents are superior. This pride fosters jealousy and rivalry, as the person seeking self-glory views others not as partners in a shared mission, but as competitors for attention. They may dismiss the achievements of others, belittle their contributions, or withhold encouragement, all in an effort to maintain their own position of prominence. Such behavior poisons relationships and sows discord where there could be harmony. Self-glory is also a form of deception, for it distorts reality and obscures the truth of one's dependence on God. No achievement, talent, or success is truly the result of personal effort alone. Every good gift comes from above, and every triumph is made possible by God's provision. To seek self-glory is to deny this fundamental truth and to credit oneself with what rightly belongs to God. It is a refusal to acknowledge one's own limitations and a failure to give thanks for the blessings that make all things possible. The pursuit of self-glory often leads to moral compromise. In their quest for recognition, individuals may resort to dishonesty, manipulation, or unethical behavior. They may exaggerate their achievements, take credit for the work of others, or engage in actions that betray their principles. Such compromises may yield temporary success, but they come at the cost of integrity and peace of mind. The person who seeks self-glory sacrifices their character on the altar of ambition, gaining the world but losing their soul. To overcome the temptation of self-glory, one must cultivate humility. Humility does not mean thinking less of oneself, but thinking of oneself less. It is the recognition that all we have and all we are is a gift from God to be used for His purposes. Humility allows us to celebrate the successes of others, to accept correction with grace, and to serve without seeking recognition. It is the foundation of true greatness, for it aligns our hearts with the will of God and opens us to His blessings. Ultimately, the pursuit of self-glory is a futile endeavor, for all human glory fades. What endures is the legacy of a life lived for God and others. When we surrender our desire for self-glory, we are free to experience the fullness of life that comes from walking humbly with God. In this freedom we find true peace, joy, and purpose, for we are no longer burdened by the need to prove ourselves. Instead, we rest in the assurance that we are already loved, valued, and accepted by the one whose glory is eternal. Harsh judgment creates an atmosphere of fear and defensiveness. When people feel constantly scrutinized, they may retreat into silence or secrecy, afraid to reveal their true selves. This stifles authenticity and vulnerability, both essential components of healthy relationships. Instead of fostering an environment where people can grow and thrive, harsh judgment creates one where they feel constrained and devalued. This dynamic hinders personal and collective growth, as individuals are less likely to seek advice, share ideas, or admit mistakes when they fear being judged. Those who judge harshly often carry an unspoken desire to elevate themselves by diminishing others. It is a subtle yet destructive form of pride, one that seeks validation through comparison. By pointing out another's flaws, the harsh judge reassures themselves of their own supposed superiority. However, this validation is hollow and fleeting, for it is built on the shaky foundation of self-righteousness. True confidence and self-worth cannot be gained by tearing others down, but by building them up and recognizing their intrinsic value as creations of God. Harsh judgment not only harms relationships with others, but also damages the soul of the one who judges. It hardens the heart, making it less receptive to God's grace and guidance. A critical spirit leaves little room for the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Instead, it fosters bitterness, resentment, and discontentment. The person who judges harshly becomes ensnared in their negativity, unable to experience the fullness of life that comes from living in harmony with God and others. The act of judging harshly is often rooted in insecurity. Those who are harshest in their judgments of others may be masking their own fears and inadequacies. By focusing on the faults of others, they divert attention away from their struggles, creating an illusion of control and strength. However, this illusion cannot withstand the light of truth, for no one is without sin or weakness. Acknowledging one's own imperfections is the first step toward breaking free from the cycle of harsh judgment and embracing a more gracious and understanding perspective. Scripture warns against the dangers of harsh judgment, reminding us that we will be judged by the same measure we use for others. This principle underscores the importance of humility and mercy in our interactions. Just as we hope to receive grace for our shortcomings, we must extend that same grace to others. Harsh judgment is incompatible with the love and forgiveness that God calls us to embody. Instead of condemning, we are called to encourage, uplift, and guide others with gentleness and compassion. Breaking the habit of harsh judgment requires intentional effort and reliance on God. It begins with self-examination, asking the Holy Spirit to reveal areas where pride and self-righteousness have taken root. This process can be uncomfortable, as it requires confronting our own flaws and weaknesses. However, it is through this humility that we open ourselves to God's transformative power. As we become more aware of our own need for grace, we are better equipped to extend that grace to others. Prayer is a powerful tool in overcoming harsh judgment. By bringing our thoughts and attitudes before God, we invite Him to reshape our hearts and minds. Prayer allows us to release our pride, seek forgiveness for our critical spirit, and ask for the wisdom to see others through God's eyes. It reminds us of our shared humanity and dependence on God's mercy, fostering empathy and understanding. Through prayer, we align ourselves with God's will, becoming instruments of His love and peace rather than agents of division and criticism. Ultimately, harsh judgment is a barrier to the abundant life that God desires for us. It robs us of joy, strains our relationships, and distances us from His presence. By choosing grace over judgment, we reflect God's character and fulfill His command to love one another. In doing so, we not only honor Him, but also create a ripple effect of kindness and compassion in the world around us. Let us strive to replace criticism with encouragement, condemnation with forgiveness, and judgment with love, living as reflections of God's boundless grace. Living without purpose is like wandering in a dense fog where each step feels aimless and every day blurs into the next. The absence of a guiding purpose strips life of its vibrancy, leaving the heart restless and the mind clouded with uncertainty. A life without purpose lacks direction, making it vulnerable to the distractions and temptations of the world. Without a clear sense of calling or goal, one becomes like a ship adrift at sea, tossed by every wave and wind, unable to chart a steady course toward meaningful destinations. Purpose is the anchor that stabilizes and the compass that points the way. A life devoid of purpose often breeds dissatisfaction and despair. The heart was not made to merely exist, but to thrive, to chase after something greater than itself. Without a reason to strive, the soul grows weary and daily routines become burdensome. The beauty of creation, the joy of relationships, and the satisfaction of hard work lose their luster when there is no overarching purpose to frame them. The soul begins to hunger for meaning, and if left unfulfilled, this hunger can lead to a deep spiritual and emotional emptiness. Living without purpose also makes one vulnerable to external influences that seek to define life for them. Without a firm foundation, one is easily swayed by the opinions and expectations of others, adopting goals that do not resonate with their true self or divine calling. Society's standards and fleeting trends become the substitute for personal conviction and spiritual direction. This results in a life lived in imitation rather than authenticity, where the pursuit of success or happiness becomes shallow and unsatisfying. The absence of purpose often stems from a disconnect with God, the ultimate source of purpose and meaning. Without aligning one's life with the Creator's design, it is easy to become lost in the busyness of the world. God's purpose provides a framework for understanding our identity, our relationships, and our role in the broader story of redemption. A life apart from this divine purpose is like a tool used for the wrong task, ineffective and unfulfilled. Discovering and embracing God's purpose transforms even the most mundane aspects of life into acts of worship and service. Living without purpose also impacts relationships. A purposeless life can lead to shallow or transactional connections, as individuals lack the clarity to discern what truly matters. Relationships become strained when there is no shared vision or mutual understanding of life's greater meaning. Purpose, on the other hand, fosters deeper bonds as it aligns individuals with common goals and inspires acts of selflessness and love. Purpose-centered relationships thrive, while purposeless ones often falter under the weight of misaligned priorities and unmet expectations. The lack of purpose can lead to a focus on temporary pleasures and distractions. When the soul yearns for meaning but does not find it, it often seeks solace in entertainment, indulgence, or material pursuits. These may provide momentary relief but ultimately fail to satisfy the deeper longing for significance. The pursuit of fleeting pleasures leaves the heart empty and yearning for more, creating a cycle of frustration and regret. Purpose, however, gives depth to joy and anchors fulfillment in something enduring and eternal. Fear and doubt often accompany a purposeless life. Without a sense of direction, every decision becomes a source of anxiety, and every challenge seems insurmountable. The uncertainty of one's path breeds insecurity, as the lack of clarity undermines confidence. However, purpose dispels fear by providing a foundation of trust and hope. It gives courage to face difficulties, knowing that each trial has a place in the greater narrative of one's calling. With purpose, setbacks become stepping stones, and fear gives way to faith. A purposeless life often neglects the unique gifts and talents bestowed by God. Each individual is created with specific strengths and abilities meant to serve others and glorify God. Without purpose, these gifts remain dormant or are used in ways that fail to align with their intended purpose. This not only deprives the individual of the joy of fulfilling their potential, but also withholds the blessings their contributions could bring to others. Purpose ignites these gifts, transforming them into tools for building God's kingdom and impacting the lives of those around us. The search for purpose is a journey that requires intentionality and surrender. It begins with seeking God, the giver of all purpose, and asking for His guidance and wisdom. Through prayer, reflection, and the study of Scripture, one can begin to discern the unique calling God has placed on their life. This journey is not without challenges, but it is one of the most rewarding pursuits one can undertake. Living with purpose infuses life with passion and direction, turning ordinary moments into opportunities for extraordinary impact. Ultimately, living without purpose is a life unfulfilled. It is a life that settles for less when it was designed for more. God's purpose is not a burden but a gift, a pathway to joy, peace, and significance. Embracing purpose transforms the way we see ourselves, our work, and our relationships. It brings clarity to confusion, hope to despair, and strength to weakness. To live with purpose is to live abundantly, walking in step with the Creator's plan and experiencing the fullness of life as He intended. Breaking promises is a betrayal of trust, an act that shakes the foundation of relationships and leaves deep scars on the hearts of those affected. A promise is not just a casual agreement, it is a solemn declaration, a commitment to act with integrity and honor. When broken, it sends a message that one's word is not dependable, causing disappointment and often a sense of worthlessness in the person who was let down. Breaking a promise reveals a lack of respect for the bond shared with others and erodes the confidence they once had in the relationship. To break a promise is to undermine the very essence of accountability. A person's word is their bond, and the act of committing to something signifies a moral obligation to follow through. When that obligation is neglected, it demonstrates a lack of responsibility and reliability. It teaches others to approach the individual's future words with skepticism, creating a barrier of doubt where trust once resided. Relationships thrive on dependability, and promises serve as the glue that holds them together. When that glue is weakened, the relationship begins to falter. Breaking promises not only damages relationships with others, but also harms one's own character. It weakens the moral fiber of the individual, making it easier to justify similar actions in the future. Each broken promise chips away at one's sense of honor, dulling the conscience and fostering a habit of compromise. Over time, the repeated act of breaking promises can lead to a life marked by inconsistency and unreliability. Such a reputation is hard to repair, as others begin to see the individual as someone whose words carry little weight. The pain caused by broken promises is not always immediately visible, but its effects can be long-lasting. It breeds resentment and mistrust, emotions that can linger for years and influence future interactions. The disappointment of broken promise often runs deeper than the unfulfilled action itself. It is the betrayal of trust and the sense of being undervalued that leaves the greatest wound. These emotional scars can make individuals hesitant to trust again, impacting their ability to form meaningful relationships and connections with others. Breaking promises can also have spiritual implications, as it reflects a failure to uphold the principles of integrity and faithfulness. In many religious teachings, including Scripture, one's word is to be a reflection of their commitment to truth and righteousness. Failing to honor promises is, therefore, a failure to reflect God's faithfulness, which believers are called to emulate. This act not only dishonors the person to whom the promise was made, but also dishonors God, whose example of unwavering reliability should inspire our own actions. The act of breaking a promise often stems from prioritizing one's own convenience over the needs or expectations of others. It reveals a selfish tendency to value personal comfort or desires above the trust placed in them. While life circumstances may sometimes make it challenging to keep a promise, the decision to break it without effort or explanation demonstrates a disregard for the other person's feelings and sacrifices. True integrity requires perseverance in fulfilling commitments, even when it is inconvenient or difficult. In a world where promises are easily made and just as easily broken, the value of keeping one's word becomes even more significant. It is a rare and precious quality to find someone who honors their commitments without fail, and such a person earns the respect and admiration of others. The simple act of following through on promises, no matter how small, builds a reputation of reliability and trustworthiness. This integrity becomes a source of strength and influence, as people are naturally drawn to those whose words are consistently aligned with their actions. One of the most damaging aspects of breaking promises is the ripple effect it creates. A broken promise to one individual can influence how they interact with others, spreading mistrust and skepticism. For example, a child who experiences broken promises from a parent may struggle to trust authority figures or form healthy relationships later in life. Similarly, friends or colleagues who have been let down may become guarded or cynical in future interactions. The impact of broken promises often extends far beyond the immediate situation, affecting countless lives in subtle but profound ways. It is essential to recognize that promises should never be made lightly. Each commitment carries with it a responsibility to fulfill it to the best of one's ability. The decision to promise something should be approached with care and thoughtfulness, ensuring that it is realistic and within one's power to uphold. By taking promises seriously and honoring them with diligence, individuals demonstrate respect for others and for the value of their own word. This practice fosters stronger relationships and a more harmonious community. When circumstances arise that make fulfilling a promise genuinely impossible, the approach taken to address the situation matters greatly. Open communication, humility, and a sincere apology can go a long way in mitigating the damage caused by a broken promise. Acknowledging the hurt caused and expressing a willingness to make amends shows respect for the other person's feelings and restores some measure of trust. It is far better to address the situation with honesty than to allow the broken promise to fester unaddressed, creating bitterness and division. Ultimately, the commitment to keeping promises is not just about fulfilling obligations to others, it is a reflection of one's character and values. A person who consistently honors their word is a beacon of integrity in a world where trust is often fragile. They bring stability and reassurance to those around them, cultivating an environment of mutual respect and cooperation. By choosing to keep promises, even when it is difficult, individuals uphold a standard of excellence that inspires others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of faithfulness and trustworthiness in their communities.
you.